Have you ever met someone who seems completely comfortable being single? Not bitter, not lonely, not desperate for love, just peaceful. While everyone else is rushing into relationships, they're taking their time, and sometimes they don't seem interested at all. People often assume something must be wrong with them. Maybe they're afraid of commitment. Maybe they're too picky. Maybe they've been hurt. But psychology suggests something very different. Because in many cases, people who choose to stay single aren't avoiding love. They're protecting something far more important, their peace. Here's the psychology behind people who choose to stay single. First, they value emotional peace more than emotional excitement. Relationships can be beautiful, but they can also be emotionally draining. Arguments, misunderstandings, uncertainty, overthinking. People who choose to stay single often become very aware how relationships affect their mental state. And once they experience peace on their own, they become very careful about who they allow into their lives, because they've learned something important. Not everyone who enters your life adds peace. Some people bring chaos. So instead of chasing love, they protect their calm. Second, they enjoy their own company. Some people are afraid of being alone, but people who choose to stay single often reach a point where they actually enjoy solitude. They don't need constant attention. They don't need someone to fill silence. They're comfortable with their own thoughts. Psychologists call this emotional independence. It means your happiness doesn't depend on another person. And once someone reaches that level of independence, being single stops feeling like loneliness. It starts feeling like freedom. Third, they're more selective about who they let in. People who choose to stay single aren't always rejecting love. They're rejecting the wrong love. They don't want relationships just for the sake of being in one. They want something meaningful, something stable, something healthy. And if they don't find that, they'd rather stay single, because they understand something many people don't. Being alone is better than being with the wrong person. Fourth, they've learned from past experiences. Not everyone who chooses to stay single has been hurt, but many of them have learned valuable lessons from past relationships. They've seen red flags they once ignored. They've experienced emotional exhaustion. They've learned what they truly need. And instead of rushing into something new, they take their time, because they know that choosing the wrong person can cost them peace, energy, and emotional stability. So they move carefully. Fifth, they focus on personal growth. People who choose to stay single often invest deeply in themselves. They focus on their goals, their passions, their self-development. They're not waiting for someone to complete them. They're working on becoming complete on their own. And psychology shows something interesting. People who are comfortable being single often develop stronger self-awareness. They understand their emotions better. They know what they want. They know what they deserve. And that makes them less likely to settle. Sixth, they don't confuse loneliness with being alone. Loneliness is emotional. Being alone is physical.
You can be in a relationship and still feel lonely. And you can be single and feel fulfilled. People who choose to stay single understand this difference. They don't rush into relationships just to avoid loneliness. Instead, they build meaningful friendships, strong family connections, a life that feels full. So being single doesn't feel empty to them. It just feels peaceful. Seventh, they prioritize emotional safety. Some people crave excitement, but others crave stability. People who choose to stay single often value emotional safety above everything else. They don't want uncertainty. They don't want emotional games. They don't want mixed signals. They want clarity. And if they don't find that, they'd rather stay single, because they understand that emotional safety is rare. And once they experience it within themselves, they become very careful about who they allow to disrupt it. Finally, they know that love shouldn't feel forced. People who choose to stay single often believe in natural connections. They don't want to force chemistry. They don't want to chase validation. They don't want to settle out of fear. They trust that the right connection will come naturally, and until then, they're okay being on their own, because they've learned something powerful. Being single isn't a problem to fix. For some people, it's a choice. A peaceful choice, a confident choice, a self-aware choice. And ironically, people who are comfortable being single often end up forming the healthiest relationships because they don't need love. They choose it. And there's a big difference. Because when someone chooses you, not out of loneliness, not out of fear, but out of genuine connection, that's when love becomes something truly meaningful.